Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a very special edition of Out on That Line. This is week 80 here on the show, and something about a truck, because I am joined by the original bad boy of podcasting, the Sultan of the Scarlet Begonias himself. We traded our washing machine for him. Friend of the pod, Tanner. Welcome back.
Thank you. What a warm welcome, and what a high price you paid.
Ha, indeed. We needed that washing machine badly.
No, it's great to be back, and you're right. There is just something about a truck.
There's something about a truck. So, truth be told, I've actually never heard that song. I just think it's a really funny concept.
I don't think I have either. Maybe once.
Jeff's just going to be listening to this like, oh, my God. Oh, I know it.
I know this one.
So anyway, Jeff, obviously, MIA this week. So we're doing something special.
He's enjoying some R&R.
He's enjoying a little R&R in Seattle, WA, with fiance of the pod.
Mm-hmm.
And we wish them well.
Yes.
But when the cat's away, the mice will play.
Meow.
Jeff said to me, you and Tanner go ahead and cobble something together. Well, Jeff, careful what you wish for. You never want to go away again, because this week we're talking about the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
But as I pitched to you before we went on, how I really see this is an opportunity to talk about when you have a firm idea, like a firm concept of someone or a firm concept of a group. You got strong opinions. You got hot takes. You are locked in what you believe. And then all of a sudden, something comes along that shifts that paradigm. And someone that you previously wouldn't have given a chance, you give a chance. And that happened to us with the Grateful Dead. Do you care to explain exactly how we got to this point? Well, actually, Let's start with this. What was your Grateful Dead?
Not like beforehand knowledge?
Yes.
Well, I have a unique experience. I would say it's somewhat unique because right before I got it, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I actually went and saw Dark Star Orchestra, a tribute to the Grateful Dead. Most people would say the best tribute, at least, in the United States. And I didn't enjoy it at all. And then, really quickly right after that, I figured, so, my thoughts on the Grateful Dead were always, jam band, noodly. I used to use the term a bunch of stoners tripping over their instruments for 2.5 hours. That's what I would describe a Grateful Dead show as. And I was very, very forthcoming with this. I was an outward Grateful Dead hater. I liked the hits. Casey Jones is a great song. Touch of Grey, right? The hits. But outward hater of the Grateful Dead, and friend of the pod, Matt Reno, a couple of years ago was trying to get me into them. He said, listen to these recordings and, give them an honest shake. And I still have that playlist saved on my Spotify. And I gave it an honest to God listen. I think Europe 72 was on there, and I just could not get into it. And I just actively did not like it. And then again, going to the show with my mom's partner. He really wanted to see them. I volunteered to go with him, and I just, the only song that I liked, and now granted there are songs that they played that night that I like now, but in the moment at that show, the only song that I liked, I looked up and it turns out they were doing a Derek of the Dominoes cover. So the one song that I liked, I was like, that song ripped. Looked it up, not even a Dead song. And the Dead didn't even cover it. So I don't know if Jerry Garcia Band used to cover it or something, but the Dead never covered that song. So, but anyway, that was my mom likes the Dead. I do not know if my dad does. But yeah, just a pretty active hater, I would say, on the Grateful Dead.
And I was right there with you because obviously, like you said, friend of the show, Matt, big Grateful Dead guy. I mean, 3 Christmas ornaments on the tree, Bob Marley, Willie Nelson, Jerry Garcia.
Yes.
So, he's in the pantheon for Matt, and that's got to be tough. Like, he's in a situation where his wife and the two of us, you and me,
yes,
big Meatloaf people, big Meatloaf contingent. Obviously, we have the Meatloaf episode. Go back and listen to that. Matt doesn't get or like Meatloaf, and he's been exposed to it enough that that's never going to happen. So I understand his predicament because we were kind of that way with Grateful Dead. Like,
Yes.
he was just like, my friends don't see what it is I see. He told me to listen to Europe 72 as well. And I just listened to it one summer day while I was shellacking a bunch of boards for the camp. And I'm like, what the fuck is this stupid hippie bullshit?
Mm-hmm.
This is awful. This is terrible. I hate this. Matt, why would you do this? Is this revenge for Meatloaf? I can't do this. I can't truck with Grateful Dead. So I was in the same position as you where I'm like, it's just dumb, hippie, noodly. You know, it's noodly.
It's noodly. And you have, again, like the negative connotation that we get being born when we were. There's like that negative deadhead kind of connotation of like just like people getting as fucked up as possible and going around and just dancing for 3 hours to music that doesn't make any sense or go anywhere.
Right, yeah. Jerry Garcia was essentially babysitting a bunch of adult stoners
exactly,
who got the day off from Kinko's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that it sounds like our preconceived notions were both pretty rigid and pretty similar going into this.
And I remember when Matt asked us to listen to stuff and we specifically talked about the song Sugary.
Mm-hmm.
I distinctly remember having a specific conversation about that song.
And I did like the phosphorescent cover of Sugary off of that Day of the Dead giant tribute album. I remember really, really liking that, and then hearing the original Sugary and being like, why is this so slow?
Mm-hmm.
Why is every other version of this so fucking slow? Phosphorescent really picked it up. So even there, I was like, I like a Dead song that wasn't done by the Dead. Or I guess it's a Jerry Garcia song, but I liked one of those that wasn't, you know, as performed by someone else.
Correct.
So just continuing to sell them short. Do you want to explain what kind of got this?
Yeah. So we were sitting in the very room that we're recording this episode in. A bit of history for you,
The room
listeners.
where it happened.
Yes. And we were hanging out one day. It was a weekday. It was a Thursday. And I was like, do you want to, watch something? You want to watch like a music doc or something? And we were flipping through, streaming services, not really landing on anything that either of us were both like, oh yeah, let's do that. And we were on Amazon, and I had seen this. I had watched like the little mini trailer thingy before. I'd seen this pop up a lot because it's an Amazon original, so they promote it somewhat heavily, even though it's a little bit older. But Long Strange Trip, 2017 documentary series, or if you watch it all at once, I guess it premiered as all at one time as a super long film. But it's in like 5 parts, I think. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. That's not the point. And so the first episode was like 40 minutes long. We watched the little trailer thing that auto plays, and you kind of said, I'd try this if you're in. And I said, I'm game.
We always reserve the right to bail.
Yeah, always reserve the right to bail. And it hooks you. It's 3 hours and 58 minutes in total. It just got its hooks right in us pretty early on. So we proceeded to watch every episode except for the last one in a row, and then the next night we watched the final episode together.
And we both fucking cried at the end.
For 20 minutes straight. The end of it is really, really something in it, and there are like contemporary reviews of this documentary where people are like, I was not a deadhead, I watched this, it changed. So like this, it changed my perspective. So this is not, a rare thing, us having seen this and kind of, hey, wait a minute, we might have been wrong.
Yeah, we're the dog going,
But yeah, it's an amazing story. Like the story of the group is amazing and epic and sad, and they reach these highs at seemingly strange times. They talk about Touch of Grey being their biggest hit, and that was like kind of towards the end of their run, in the final 8 years of the band. So you experience the formation of the group, which is always a fun part in those doc series, right? You get everyone, and the cool thing about this series is all the surviving members are interviewed for it, so you hear it right from them. They all signed off on it, and yeah, you get how they all got there, and then once that train kind of takes off, it is just a wild effing ride.
Oh, 100%. There were 3 things that stuck out to me because you're definitely a guy who I think got way into the music.
Yeah.
You are way more into the music itself than I am. And I've moved a lot. The needle's moved a lot for me, but you've really gotten deep into it. And for me, what the documentary left me with was an extreme appreciation for the lore, like all the stories, the formation, the roads they traveled, the trajectory of the band, the idea of the experience, especially at like Touch of Grey onward, when like crowds were bigger in the parking lot than they were inside the show itself. Like that experience of their days playing in San Francisco to that, crazy. The experience of being a Deadhead or a tape trader, and you know, they interview all of these different celebrity Deadheads who talk about like their favorite shows, their favorite versions of things. So I'm like, okay, the experience of the Grateful Dead is really cool. The lore is really cool. And the philosophy behind it is also really, really cool. Because the moment that got its hooks in me with this was in the first episode when they were talking about how all the members of the Grateful Dead dropped acid at like ritualistically. They would drop acid, and what can't remember if it was Bob Weir or who it was, but whoever it was that was talking, we both hear the lawnmower. Whoever it was that was talking said the formula was simple. You get all of these musicians together, they drop acid, they dissolve their egos, and from then on it becomes about the music. And it was absolutely true, because these guys never imploded. They stopped for a little while. Certain people took leave of absence. Certain people passed away, and we'll get to that. But it was about the music. They locked in. They dissolved the egos and made it about the project. And that had my attention. That made my fucking heart sing.
And the whole aspect of being kind of like an outsider before we kind of got it in quotations, was that Jerry was the leader of the Grateful Dead, right? And that like Jerry was like the front man and all this stuff. And then you learn that he didn't really want that. They were all equal in the band. He saw, like, he might be playing the lead guitar licks, might be singing a bunch of the songs, but what he's doing is no more or less important than what anybody else in the band is doing. And that lines right up with, again, the egos being dissolved. And it was about the music and where kind of the music was taking them, where the music allowed them to go. If they would push the limits of a song, and sometimes they would fail. That's the interesting aspect too, is like, I've been going back through and listening to full shows, and there are definitely like a, best version of X song. And for somebody like me, who's like very kind of meticulous with like bands, I'm not like a huge improv guy. So like when they do like a 30-minute Dark Star, that still doesn't really do it for me. It doesn't move the needle for me, right? Like, to use your analogy, but like, again, the different kind of Altheas out there to speak to like a more upbeat song, or the first couple times they were fusing Scarlet Begonias into Fire on the Mountain versus the Cornell version, which is like the apex, like the perfect version. A lot of their songs from that Cornell show, which is like a legendary show, are considered the perfect versions, the perfect live versions of songs. So I just like bopping around, I'm not doing it in any specific order. If there's a good version of it, I'll like ditch it onto a playlist. But another thing was that like Jerry had like a lot of like anxiety, and he didn't want to like be this frontman guy. So the ability to improvise rather than trying to painstakingly recreate the same song every single night took away the anxiety from him and took away the stress of playing music, especially as the years went on and they kind of became greater than they even ever thought they could have. Yeah. Because again, they were big in the 70s, but they got big in the 80s, playing football stadiums and the like of that, versus you might say musically they were at their best in the 70s, So, but and there's also a part in the movie where it's like, they're talking to a Deadhead, and he's like, you go to a show and you really, really hope that they're going to play your favorite song, and they don't. But it's such a good show, and you're like, well, I know they're not going to play this show again tomorrow. Where's the next show? Oh, it's 200 miles away. That's not that far. Okay, let's go next show. Maybe they'll play it tomorrow night. And that's kind of like the inception of the traveling circus that followed them. Right. Is that you're chasing your song, which is something that I really like. I like that aspect of, Because nowadays, and not to like put artists on blast or anything, but nowadays, most of the time when you go see an artist, they're going to play mostly the same set. A couple of years ago, my girlfriend Anna and I, we went and saw The Head and the Heart play at the Flynn in Burlington. And the next night, went to State Theater and in Portland, Maine. They played the exact same show both nights, and it was great both times.
Down to the detail.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty
Wow.
much. Maybe one song swapped out, but like pretty much the same show, which is fine because they're not expecting people to, you know what I mean? It's just a different,
Correct.
You know, people aren't following The Head and the Heart around, right? They're not following Young the Giant around. They play the same show most of the time. They swap out like song 3. They have like 2 different songs they put in the third song. But as a guy like me who is like constantly like reading artist set lists and like trying to like find, you know, like stuff like that, the Grateful Dead's very inviting because that's all it is difference. You know, that's all it is variation. And variations within variations. You know, they might play Truckin' 2 nights in a row, but they're not going to play Truckin' the same 2 nights in a row.
Right.
Or at the same spot in the set list. So yeah, and again, for someone that like this experience has not made me seek out other kind of jammy bands, you know? This isn't like the door opening to all of that kind of music. This is like a very specific connection that I feel I have with the band, specifically after hearing their story, the way that it's told in this documentary. What they stood for, the fact that they were a huge part of this kind of counterculture movement that was parallel and sometimes overlapped with the beat literature movement in San Francisco. You know, there were a lot of things in those first couple episodes that really blew my mind. Their connections with Neil Cassidy and Ken Kesey. Like that, it's cool enough without those connections, but, you know, as someone who has waded into the beat literature you and I both have from our experiences with friend of the pod, Tyler, like, things were just clicking at a rapid pace in those early parts of the story of the Dead.
Yeah, and it's like there's a prevailing sentiment that the hippie movement, which sprang out of the Beat generation, a lot of those people were up their own ass.
Yes.
You cannot say that about the Grateful Dead, and that's the thing, is looking at them, I absolutely would have pegged it as just like, well, far out, man. Like, we just like to jam, you know, it's noodly.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is they were all, to a letter, hyper intelligent. Jerry Garcia, you listen to that guy speak and you're like, holy shit. Like, they were a hyper intelligent group of people, which tracks because they were all insanely talented at their respective instruments. So it was really interesting to hear that philosophy. And it was like, I used to think Frank Zappa, getting my Zappa bit in.
Yo, you got a bing.
Weep. I used to think Frank Zappa was like drug-addled and out of control. And then you start listening to him and you dig into him and you go, he never did drugs. Cigarettes and burnt hot dogs were his vice. And it's nice to be surprised. It's kind of nice to be proven wrong. I think it's a healthy thing to realize when your rigid preconceived notions have been blown out of the water. And that's what happened listening to Jerry Garcia. And I would love to double back or to kind of branch off for a second into the Ken Kesey stuff and the acid tests.
Oh, yeah.
And the Merry Pranksters and all of that.
Yeah. And how, you know, they would what? So they would go to Ken Kesey's acid tests and they would all drop acid. They'd drink it out of it. It was mixed in like what? The punch or the Hawaii
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, Kool-Aid. So they're all there tripping. And people were like, what about music? Should we have music? And the people from the Dead all had their shit in their car. So they go in, and now they're playing the music at the acid test. And they kind of became the house band, you know, of the acid test. And I look at that as like them forging themselves as young musicians and as a band, forging themselves in the fire. So A, you've dissolved the egos, but B, you are playing with like tripping total freaking balls on acid.
Right.
At that point, nothing like
you're playing with house money.
You're playing with house money, and the experience you're having with that is only going to bring you kind of closer to your instrument and closer to again the bandmates and everything. So again, like that's early in their career. So who gives a fuck? You know, you're playing to a stadium of 60,000 people now in the 80s. That all doesn't matter. You're so melded to your instrument by that point. There's a quote from Bob Weir. He says, you know, sometimes you'd be playing your guitar, you look down, it'd be an alligator. You know? And out of that kind of the word of mouth about them spread because it wasn't the same people at the acid test every week, right? So
And they wouldn't play the acid test every week.
Correct.
They said, like, sometimes we'd go
sometimes
and play
the vibe,
for hours.
Yep.
Sometimes we'd play one song. Sometimes we wouldn't play at all.
Yep. And that's also like really interesting too. Is like it was like again, the ego being dissolved. They're not like playing to get, you know what I mean? They're just playing because the mood is striking them on the trip to play.
No inhibitions.
No inhibitions. You talked about Jerry being hyper intelligent, and Jerry's thing was like he always wanted it to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was always about having fun. It wasn't about. It was like if they could, roof over their head, and food in the fridge, and they were able to play music and have fun. That's all they wanted, and that really resonated with me. The first couple of times they kind of said that. They showed images of them all living together in San Francisco, and that they just played their instruments nonstop in that time frame.
They were fucking obsessed, and I had the same kind of reaction where it's like, okay, it's about the fun. What crystallized that for me, again, in the documentary, was Jerry Garcia was talking about the Watts Towers.
Yes.
Which are these giant metal structures in the middle of Watts in Los Angeles, and the city was like, well, these are a fucking hazard. These are going to fall and crush somebody. We got to take these down. And they went in to take them down and realized they were so tall and they were so solid and cumbersome. It was like, you know what? It's way more of a pain in the ass to take them down. We're just going to leave these things up. They're pretty securely here. And Jerry Garcia described it as the sculptor had made something that would outlive him and that would stand the test of time. And me sitting there, I'm like, okay, so Jerry Garcia was inspired to do the same thing by the tower. Okay. And then Jerry Garcia comes in and goes, I was not interested in permanence whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to live in the moment, and I wanted to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that clicked with me right there, and I'm like, Jerry Garcia is the motherfucking truth.
And they were performing, they were recording in the studio to finance going on tour. And I feel like even as an outsider, we both kind of knew that they were they're a live band.
Yeah.
Right. But that they, it was kind of, you got to make some money to be able to go on tour. And then I know that, as they got into touring and everything, they had, who was the guy that made like the best acid ever?
Owsley Stanley.
And he was their sound technician, and he created the wall of sound.
They call him Bear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which, when they get to that part, again, the story of the wall of sound, like the most perfect PA system ever created. That's pretty wild stuff. Like we're talking about a band that I used to think would do acid, get high, and stumble over their instruments, and now we're talking about the most state-of-the-art public address system it created.
And that's the crazy thing too that the documentary shows you is like as the wall fleshed out and became more sophisticated, you see like what goes into it. And I think it was Weir who was talking about like we were dragging ass because you play until 1 a.m. and then the crew, or maybe it was a crew member.
It was the crew guy. It was the
Yeah.
crew guy, and then he was also like Jerry's lead guy in the Jerry Garcia band too.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
he's talking about like it takes all day to set up. You play a show. You have to break it down. You have to get to the next town. You're sleeping like 2 hours a night if you're lucky.
And then you got to set it all back up again. It's intricate and it's dangerous and it's huge.
It's massive. Like it
Yeah.
has to be seen to be believed. I watched it going up in that documentary, and I was like, "Holy fucking shit!"
Quick aside. When you were talking about how smart they all are, I don't want to miss out on the fact that when they recruited Phil Lesh to come play bass, he was like a composer and a classically trained trumpet player. So you bring that kind of acumen to an instrument like the bass, and he is one of the most unique bass players of all time. But again, that intelligence, like the intelligence there, the intelligence in the PA setup, and again, the intelligence to kind of read each other and be able to improvise. And again, sometimes stuff goes off the rails.
Oh yeah.
They weren't a perfect band, and again, that's not what they were trying to do.
Correct.
Right? It was like again trying to follow the feeling or trying to follow the vibe. But yeah, the wall of sound, just really, really fascinating in how they had the two microphones. One would eliminate the feedback and everything. As like a music tech kind of nerd, that also was a very big highlight of the story for me as well.
Yeah, and it is also very indicative, like, as the wall of sound grew, so did the following of the Grateful Dead, and in many ways, that was a death knell for Jerry Garcia, because he was they were all so connected to the audience. They fed off of an intimate connection with the audience. And so as that audience grows, that anonymity takes the place of that intimacy, and it becomes harder and harder to reach the point that Jerry Garcia was trying to get to, which was he wanted to touch Nirvana. And that is paralleled for me. The acid thing, I'll preface this with, the acid thing was very edifying because people who take acid and do psychedelics get a bum rap. Oh, fucking stupid burnouts. But these were intelligent people. Like Owsley Stanley made the purest LSD. Smart guy. Ken Kesey, incredibly smart guy. And like, these were people who were searching for something. They weren't trying to get away from, you know what I mean? It's not an escape. It's a tool.
It's an expansion.
Correct. So you're not escaping from anything. You're expanding the space around you. And they show a video of the government conducting a trial on this guy. They give him acid, and they are kind of interviewing him. And at one point, he closes his eyes, and I was like broken by this experience. Watching this guy close his eyes, and he starts to sweat, and then he gets this smile, and then he starts to cry because he's getting closer and closer and closer to whatever this is, the answer. He's peaking, and you just see the emotion overtake him. He's seeing something that maybe he's not supposed to see, and not in a terrifying way, just like, what comes after this? And in my mind, I'm like, this is corny, but this guy is so close to the void that when he hits it, he's going to physically vanish. I thought the guy was going to physically vanish from his chair. But before he could hit that point, the researcher snapped his fingers in his face and brought him out of it. And you just watch this guy collide back into reality. And just like, that broke me. I'm like, he was almost there, and they pulled him out. And that's kind of what Jerry Garcia was trying to do with his music. Like, acid was a part of it. Cocaine later became a part of it.
Heroin became a bit in there, too.
You know. But you could just see those moments, especially like pre-Touch of Grey, where he was just in his own world playing that guitar, not ignoring the audience, but like through them, he was getting closer and closer, feeding off that energy, which is making him more creative. And the more locked into the music he gets, the closer he's getting to touching that void. It was fucking a wild thing to watch.
And in turn, the audience is taking that ride with him. It's just like a cycle. He feeds off the audience's energy. He goes for it. The energy comes back out of his guitar into the audience, and it just rolls. And again, not to say that everybody else in the band was there to prop up what Jerry was doing,
right? But
instead, there are times where Phil Lesh's bass parts will cut right through. You know what I mean? It's not all Jerry doing the guitar thing all the time,
right?
And then you have Mickey Hart, bless him, back there doing God knows what on the extra, percussion set, with my guy Bill on like the more traditional drum set. I always thought that was such a dumb gimmick. I was like, so stupid, dude. Two drummers. Because I was like, Allman Brothers Band, that's a good band. You two drummers. That's how you do two drummers. You know, have a guy playing these weird bongo things. And I'm like, again, stupid presupposition about the group. Because a lot of the time you can't even really hear Mickey Hart playing. So
right. He's just kind of fleshing it out behind the scenes.
Yeah. And we talked about, the highs and the lows of the story, right? The highs being like, again, Jerry nearing Nirvana and sometimes finding it. Sometimes finding it through guitar. But the fact of the matter is this band beat the hell out of themselves for years. I mean, abusing drugs, but also could be on the road for so long. And they were doing so many shows in a time where bands just like weren't really doing this to themselves. It was like, especially in the 70s, because like in the 60s it was kind of the model, and then they just ramped it up in the 70s, and were playing more and more shows. And then you have people in the band, people in the crew, passing away far too young. And going back and listening through, you really can tell the different iterations of the group. And they all have their merits. And I wouldn't say that any one of them has their faults. I would say they're all good, and they're all good in their own way. You got Pigpen at the beginning, doing harmonica, doing kind of organ stuff, vocalizing. And then ultimately, he passes away. 27 Club.
And he was a really
Yeah.
interesting example of the fact that this wasn't Jerry Garcia's band.
No,
This was everybody's thing. Like Pigpen, when he got to show up and show out on different songs, it was a vastly different experience, but it was quintessential Dead, and that's what was so cool about it. Everybody got a chance to like make one their own.
Yeah, yeah. And, he hit the bottle pretty hard. He wasn't as much into the other drugs as the other members were. Booze was kind of his thing. And then out of him kind of, as he's kind of, don't mean to say this like this, but as he's kind of phasing himself out, they get Keith Godshaw in there to play extra keyboards to kind of supplement. And again, Pigpen's kind of dwindling. And then eventually Keith's wife Donna joins a year later as an extra vocalist, which, flashback, I'm at Higher Ground seeing Dark Star Orchestra. I'm like, who is this woman up here screaming?
It was a Scaffos.
yeah. Just like couldn't have hated it more. And I really look back and I'm like, damn, man, like they played a lot of songs that I do like now. Why couldn't I have just got it then? But because I didn't, it wasn't time for me to get it then. It didn't make sense then. Unless they were like, and now we're going to tell you a brief bit of bio in between songs. And they tell us, I'm like, oh, okay, actually, I like this now. Yeah. But you have the group with Donna and Keith. Mickey Hart leaves for 3 years, so it's just my guy Bill back there. That's when Europe 72 happens. It's a one-drummer recording. Those songs are pretty tight. And then Mickey Hart comes back in 74. Do you want to discuss the Mickey Hart thing? Because I know you like something that came out of the Mickey Hart thing.
Yeah, I'm very partial, as I know you are, to the song He's Gone, which has kind of been co-opted as a song about passing. You know, you can play it for an old friend, and it's kind of this, it's taken on that meaning. But it was written by Robert Hunter, the great Robert Hunter, whom, out of the Grateful Dead, I don't know, might be my favorite guy, because his lyrics, that motherfucker could write. He was a poet. Really interesting guy. So he wrote He's Gone, and it was basically about the fact that Mickey Hart's dad was acting as the group's money manager for a long time, and Robert Hunter goes, nah, man, this guy is shady as fuck. We should not be doing this. And everyone's like, it's fine, man. Far out. Like, it's Mickey's dad. We'll do it. And Robert Hunter was like, okay. And this song was his fucking hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. And I love the lyrics in it where it's like, you know better, but I know him. It's all about the fact that Mickey Hart's dad absconded with their money. And they had no clue where he was.
And like, dude, that didn't even click for me until you brought it up a couple of weeks after we had watched this documentary, and we're kind of like dipping the toe in the Dead. Like, it's so, like, again, it's a good, like, passing song. In the documentary, they play it when they're talking about Pigpen's passing, right?
Yes, correct.
So I had that context of, like...
As did I initially.
And then you listen to the lyrics, and, like, you brought it up first that it was about Mickey Hart's dad, and it's like, damn, like, Robert Hunter.
And I love those lyrics. Hot as a pistol, but cool inside.
Yep.
Like, did I get that correct?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like you and I, like as a bit, will do that song where it's like, where'd he go? Oh, dude, he moved. He's gone.
Nothing's gonna bring you back.
And that's the thing is like their expansive catalog, different things will imprint on you. And the weird thing for me is it's exactly what you said. They're a live band. But I like most of the studio stuff way better. But, like, Cornell cannot be denied. Europe 72 cannot be denied. There are live experiences for me that cannot be denied. And then there are some that I've heard, and I'm like, they're falling apart. I've heard Cats fuck with more harmony than this.
And especially towards the end. So when we're getting into this, you know, fast forward to the end of the Dead, a couple of years before Jerry passed away, they played a show in Vermont up at Highgate Airport. And I learned about this on the internet. And I texted my mom, and I said, hey, is there any chance that, like, we were there? And when I was, like, a kid, I would have been, like, 2 or 3, I think. And she's like, no, the traffic was really bad. They were, like, turning people away. We wouldn't have even tried to go any. Like, it was too much. It was too many people. And she's like, and it was bad. It was bad dead anyway. So it does eventually kind of hit a point late 80s and then to the end where it really becomes hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of sad. I haven't gone beyond live stuff from like 1980.
Oh wow!
With the exception of a live version of Touch of Grey,
Which came out in what, 86?
85 maybe 85 86.
Okay.
But it's the live version off of and I don't even know if it's a live version. It's said it's a live version on the track listing, but it sounds like the recording. But yeah, it scares me to go there. To go, like, especially because knowing what Jerry was going through, and again, the ultimate tragedy of it is, and not to say that anybody's passing isn't more tragic. Brent Midland, who him and Jerry had the great connection from 79 to 90 before he left us far too soon. Drug overdose. Those like some of their stuff. Well, actually, no, I'm totally incorrect in some of the things I was saying here. I gotta back off because it's 89 when they do the Dear Mr. Fantasy into Hey Jude at Sullivan Stadium in Foxborough. So I've listened to that a bunch.
Okay.
So that's 89 because then Brent was gone within a year. But at the you know, it all becomes too much for Jerry. He's using a lot. He can't leave his hotel room. That whole last part, the whole last chapter in the story of the Grateful Dead is just absolutely crushing because it's such like a fun and feel good ride. Again, there are sad spots on the ride, but it is a fun ride up until it's not. And it drops off quick.
Because that's the thing. If we're going to keep it focused on Jerry, and I know our whole thing was like Grateful Dead was bigger than any one member. But what happened is Jerry became the nominal leader because that's who the people latched onto.
He became this Christ-like figure simply because of the guitar play. I don't know, like
yeah, front and center with the guitar and singing most of the songs.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, Touch of Grey came out of his diabetic coma.
Yeah, which again, like things got so bad with him that he slipped into a coma.
Yeah.
And he got clean for a bit, and then he started using again.
And that's the thing is, like, not to blame it sounds melodramatic to say, but the Grateful Dead ended up killing Jerry Garcia. Like, people look at him as this Christ-like figure.
Yeah.
And he didn't see himself that way.
No.
And again, I don't know if it was Bob Weir or someone else. I'll keep going to the Bob Weir well.
I might be able to confirm or deny.
But somebody was like, Jerry did not sign up to be the mayor of a traveling city, which is what the Deadheads had turned the Grateful Dead experience into.
And they're destroying the places.
Right.
Right? And that was the thing where Jerry didn't want to be the authority. He didn't want to be like, hey, quit fucking up.
Yeah, not
you know?
cool.
Yeah. But the fact that, like, you know, people just wanted to touch him. People just wanted to see him. He never signed up for any of that. He didn't want any of that. It stopped being fun, right? And it was always just about being fun.
Now it was a responsibility that he had to all these people.
And the last show they played, I think it's 95. Bob Weir says this in the documentary that's about him. That's on Netflix. That they're going off the stage, and Jerry's going, you know, to the right, and Bob's going to the left, and they'll see each other again when they're touring next or whatever. And Jerry just said, but you know, Bob's like, hey, you know, Jerry, we'll see you, you know, see you whenever. And he goes, always a hoot, always a hoot. And that's the last thing Jerry Garcia said to Bob Weir.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's pretty wild.
And then I watched some of the shows, the Fare Thee Well shows they did in 2015, where Trey Anastasio took the role of Jerry with the other surviving members, and there's someone with a sign that says always a hoot. They keep showing him. Yeah.
That's great.
And that's the thing, too, is like the lore and the lyrics and everything.
Broke Down Palace, by the way.
Oof.
Ooh.
That is, yeah, that's...
Who's cutting onions?
And again, in the documentary series, they're playing that song as they're talking about Jerry's death,
right.
Which is just rips like your heart right out from its roots. But anyway, we talk about the Jerry of it all, but I really, really, really am into Bob Weir because he was the young guy in the band. He was the young baby-faced guy. He who was the rhythm guitar player. So of anybody in the band, because again, usually the bassist gets kind of overlooked, but Phil Lesh was doing some pretty crazy, nifty bass stuff. He wasn't just playing simple bass stuff.
Right.
As the rhythm guitar player, especially when you're playing with a guy like Jerry, he would always say that he would try to sense where Jerry was going and meet him there with like a little treat. Which I think is like, so again, it's fun.
It's all
fun. You watch the interviews of these guys, especially Jerry and Bob together, and they're funny and they're fun, and you want to fucking hang out with them. And I'd certainly want to go watch that band play. Like, again, seeing that through the whole different lens, these are people that you want to be around. These are good people. These are people that are not in this for any nefarious thing or any sort of ego, because that's been dissolved long ago.
Yep.
If anything, they're anti-ego.
And quite frankly, at this point, I feel sorry for you if you're so cynical that you can't, especially after listening to us, converts, if you're so cynical you can't go give it a shot. That's really what I thought about. I was like, that was me. I was like, these stupid hippies.
Yeah.
And then you realize the whole experience is fun. It's fun. It's profound. It's great art. And they didn't set out to be like, we're artists. They were like, we're just having fun, man. Far out.
Yep.
What a trip. Like, that's what they were trying to accomplish. And, like, that's the most pure reason to pursue anything. Not for financial gain, not for the Hall of Fame. You do it because you can't see yourself doing anything else. And that is the experience I wish we could have had as musicians, to be able to, like, tour like that, to be out on the road. Like, yeah, as the band got bigger and it got more complicated, it took its toll. But in the 70s, when they're just, like, traveling around playing these shows, like, there was footage from the time when the Godshaws joined up. And it just looked like they were having the time of their lives out in the sun somewhere. Like, who fucking knows where they were, but they were just, like, out playing on a beautiful day, playing for hours, and just, like, the ability to go town to town, place to place, playing your music. It's different every time. And you have fun little bits. Bob Weir leaves Jerry Garcia a treat.
Yeah.
They support each other. Pigpen gets to have a feature. Jerry has a feature. Phil Lesh. Like, it was just a profoundly cool way of going about something like music.
Yeah, it's like, democratic is too light of a word. You know what I mean? It always served the music. All the moves they made served the music, and nobody had any qualms with that, right? They all bought in on a totally different level than most bands buy into something on, right? And again, on top of it, they were highly proficient musicians, and they, again, in those formative years, they only got better. I would never say that they plateaued as a band. I don't think that really exists, like, especially in a group where you're improvising every night.
Right.
I mean, the drugs took the toll, but I don't think the creative, you know what I mean? Like, maybe Jerry smoked too much heroin before a show and fumbled around a little too much, but that's not really indicative of the long arc of his guitar playing career. Right.
Correct.
But yeah, and now, like, again, I look back and I say, okay, I like Scarlet Begonias now. Dark Star Orchestra definitely played it. I remember mentally saying to myself, fuck this, as soon as the song started. And now I've probably listened to that song on Spotify 40 to 50 times.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I came around on Scarlet Begonias finally.
I knew you would. I was just waiting for you, man. I was just waiting for you on the other side.
It stopped being a bit. Now I actually like it.
Especially the Cornell into Fire on the Mountain.
Yeah.
Even because Fire on the Mountain is one of my favorite Dead songs at this point. And Begonias leading into it is just fantastic. That's Phil Lesh masterclass in the way that he plays, like, anti-bass. It's like a third guitar. It's just in a lower register. But yeah, I look back at, obviously we didn't really get a chance to see them perform. Jerry passed away in 95. I don't think you and I were in any position in 95 to be like, yeah, I want to see the Grateful Dead.
I'm 6.
Yeah. So I feel like I have this thing about John Lennon. We never existed on the earth at the same time that John Lennon did.
Fuck, you're right.
By many years, by 10.
Mm-hmm.
We existed on earth at the same time that Jerry Garcia did.
Mm-hmm.
But we still just, like, missed him. So it's kind of evened my perspective on like the lamenting of not being around. And not that I love like John Lennon or anything like that, but it's like the idea. I never, because like the Beatles are so huge for you and me.
Right, yeah.
And never existed on the earth at a time that he did. Never drew breath on the same planet that he did. So yeah, it's almost like it all sucks. We didn't get to see Prince before he passed away.
Right.
Not that we had many chances to. You know what I mean? So
I was 3 when Zappa died. You know?
Yeah. Well, and the Zappa thing, is another thing that we watched that documentary, Zappa, and that clicked for me, too, right there. So maybe I'm just going to start watching documentaries about all the bands that I don't like, and maybe I'll stop being called a music snob. Even though I've been so much better about it recently, I like to think. But
are we going to watch the Eagles doc next?
No. That's I'm sorry.
We got a great comment in our Harry Styles video. Did you see that? I need to know how old you gentlemen are, because only millennials would rip on the Eagles like that.
I'm old enough to take a big fat shit on your face.
I love you, whoever that was.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah. No, I don't think that'll ever make sense to me.
Yeah.
Maybe like on my deathbed, they're okay.
They stab it with their steely knives.
Yeah. But like, and again, the Eagles probably have some good lore or whatever, yada yada yada. Well, I'm sure Jimmy Buffett does too. Well, we were swimming in the Bahamas, and that's when I said cheeseburger in paradise. Wouldn't it be great if I had a cheeseburger right now here in paradise? A cheeseburger in paradise.
Vinny, start recording.
But and again, looking back now on the Dead, you brought up that Day of the Dead compilation album.
Yeah,
5.5 hours of Dead covers, and bands that I really like, and not like big bands, not big mainstream bands. This isn't, Arctic Monkeys doing a Grateful Dead song. This isn't the Chili Peppers doing a Dead song. Lil Lone Bellow does Direwolf. How fun is that?
That's Direwolf was pre-existing our face turn on the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
I unironically love the song Direwolf.
You like Direwolf, okay. Just fun little nuggets like that. Like, Unknown Mortal Orchestra does Shakedown Street.
I know.
I showed Pete that last night. He was like, oh, yeah.
Fuck, I love Unknown Mortal Orchestra.
It's faithful, but it's in their own style. You really just kind of see the influences of the Dead more and more now as we're on the other side, now that we're woke to the Grateful Dead.
Oh.
Can I say that on this podcast?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I guess the underlying theme here, the real relation, thank you, Rush.
The underlying theme.
Yes. Is that don't judge a band besides the Eagles based on stuff you don't know. Dip a toe. Read a Wikipedia article. Watch a 10-minute YouTube video. Watch a 4-hour documentary like we did. Be open to it.
Right.
And again, we reserve the right to pull the ripcord at any point in the process. And if it sucked, we would have. But it very much unsucked.
Correct. I was
non-sucked.
compelled.
Yeah, it's a highly compelling story. The turns and twists it makes. Again, the tragedy, the bliss. Again, it's like the hero's journey, but it's all out of order.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, and it's a triumphant story. It's a tragic story, and that again is my favorite part, and the stuff I'm most able to talk about: the lore, the experience, the idea of the Grateful Dead. The music, as I said before, you've really put in the work. It is an intimidating volume of stuff. And I'm saying that as a Frank Zappa fan.
Yeah, it's pretty unwieldy, especially when you consider the fact that I'm just like looking at stuff on Spotify. There's all these other people that have converted their tapes onto their own YouTube channels and everything, which I'm not even, there's archives.net, which has all this other stuff from the tape traders that's digitized. I'm wading through, I listened to the Egypt recordings the other night for the first time. That was pretty cool. But it's unwieldy, but it's worth it. And again, you might be listening to a show and be like, oh, I don't know if they have it tonight. And just bail out, try another one, or bail out and try another one some other time. But I do enjoy listening to a whole show top to bottom. because sometimes they'll do some teases here, some teases there, bring it back around, which I wouldn't really let other bands maybe necessarily get away with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big like Fish fan.
No.
But Fish comes out of the ashes of the Grateful Dead. They pick up the mantle, kind of for this group of people that want to get as fucked up as possible and pivot at the waist.
Yeah. Take a bunch of nitros.
Yeah.
Up into 3 fish chairs.
I hate Fish. But again, if you like Fish, hey man,
More power to you.
exactly, more power to you. It doesn't affect me at all.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about the Dead too is we went out to Matt Reno's. We did the bit. We went out there and we said, hey, we like the Dead now, and we got to have that great moment where we just nerded out for about 15 minutes straight. Oh, this one, and that was mostly just about the songs themselves and not like the specific versions and everything like that.
Correct.
I don't know if I'll ever get that far down the weeds as to be like, January 11th, 77. I listen to the big shows, but, I'm not going to be like Al Franken and know like the best version of it unless it's spoon-fed to me by the internet.
Right.
Which says, Cornell, best show. Okay.
Which was his favorite Althea, right? Or was his
favorite Althea is like
NASA
July. Yeah, it's
something?
Nassau Coliseum, July 15th, 1980.
Wow. You were sitting on that one.
I listen to that song a lot. It is a really good version of that song, and I really dig that song. That's probably one of my favorite Dead songs is Althea.
Althea's a great song.
The guitar part's so cool. It's very like intricate while also like not being like flashy.
Yeah.
It just kind of chugs along.
We are going to see Dead and Company.
Yes, we are.
Later this summer.
We are.
With
That's back.
Mr. John Mayer
Yes.
taking over lead guitar duties. We got to get Althea, right?
Oh, I've been working on a dream set list.
Oh, baby.
And it's on there.
What's your dream set list?
Oh, right off the top of my head? I mean, the songs that I really want to hear are Althea. I'd love to hear Begonias in the Fire on the Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear China Cat Sunflower and I Know You Rider. I'd love to hear a good upbeat Shakedown Street.
Mm-hmm.
No drag. If it drags, I'm good.
Yeah.
It'd be dope if they played St. Stephen. It'd be really dope if they played Broke Down Palace.
Yeah.
I'd love a Touch of Grey. I would love a Franklin's Tower. That's a song that's been growing on me a lot lately. Franklin's Tower. I would love as I go to my phone here. They do a really good Knock on Heaven's Door where Mayer really expands the guitar solo part out. That's I'd like that.
That's good selling.
Casey Jones. There's a lot that I would dig. I don't want to hear Dark Star. I just would rather not, and that's not. If you like Dark Star, good for you.
Yep.
That's great. It's not for me. 30-minute song is just a tad too much.
It's a little bit of a commitment.
And again, I'm looking. This is excellent podcast audio. I know. Morning Dew.
Morning Dew for sure.
Jack Straw. He's gone. Brown Eyed Women. Tennessee Jed would be great. Good Lovin', but again, it's got to be upbeat. And yeah. Uncle John's band playing in the band would also be nice. So I got a lot there. And again, if you play, the other one, cool. If you play Deal, great. If you play Dark Star, I'm going to go get a cheeseburger probably.
Yeah, piss lot.
Yeah. But I dig like this anticipation of like, hey, if I'm seeing a band that I don't want spoilers for, I won't look up a set list. But if I'm like seeing a band that I kind of don't really like, I'll look up set lists. There's no point in looking up Dead and Company set lists, man.
Nah, man. It's total cosmic gumbo.
Yeah, man. But no, yeah, I would say like Althea, Scarlet Begonias, Fire on the Mountain, Morning Dew, all S tier.
Yeah, the heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And like Morning Dew off Europe 72.
Mm-hmm.
Christ.
And the story that the sound engineer tells about how like the bass drum mic fell over and he was out in this like box truck. He had to go into the theater, the Lyceum in London. All 4 Lyceum shows are available on Spotify. And we just passed the 50th anniversary of all of them, so maybe I listened to them on the day that they came out. Maybe he had to go into the theater and fix the mic, and he came off, and they were going into morning dew, and he said the truck will be fine. Where I'm supposed to be is like right here. And he watched off stage, and like Jerry looked over at one point and like did a little eyebrow raise over his glasses. As if to say, I know what you're doing. You're supposed to be over there. But again, mischievous. And it turns out like that's the best recording of Morning Dew.
And it survived. He talks about like creeping in, and he's like, and he got it.
Yep, and he got it. And it's the one they put on the thing. And that was, I believe, the last song they played on the entire tour of Europe, that 72 tour. Which all of those shows are now available digitally on Spotify. Every single Europe show. Which is pretty nuts.
Yeah.
They played a lot of shows. It's pretty nuts that all of them have been painstakingly remastered. They're putting all of the London shows out on like a it's so many records, I don't even know. But it's all the London shows, like $550. Huge box set.
That's a lot of quiche.
Yeah. And it's coming out this year because it's the 50th anniversary.
Wow. That's why it's $550.
Yes, just add a 5.
You know. NBD. Well, so we usually go for an hour or a little south on this. I don't know. Do you have much more ground to tread in your mind?
I would just say that again, look at them not as a bunch of like morons, you know? Like it's so easy to look at photos of them in the 70s with the scraggly hair and the hippie look and Bob Weir kind of looking like a doofus up there. Give it a chance. Watch the doc. Watch something about the Grateful Dead. Because it is, and again, what I like is that like other people have other favorite songs and everything, right? So like it's a wide swath. They released a lot of music. And yeah, as an employee that worked at Ben and Jerry's, being able to now enjoy, I mean, I always like the flavor, it tastes good, but to be able to really like not be like, oh, Cherry Garcia, is nice. I had my first pint of it the other day on the other side of the Dead experience.
Oh.
Yeah, it was great.
I have yet to do that because I remember growing up, I'm like, Cherry Garcia, it just didn't mean anything to me. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, I don't know, pour one out for Jerry. Snark a whole pint for Jerry.
I've always liked that ice cream. I've always liked it, but now I like it even more.
Even more. Yeah, and I think to piggyback off of you, listen to interviews with Jerry Garcia. Listen to interviews with any of them, but it was the Jerry stuff that really turned me on. And I'm not obsessed with the Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not picking on you and being like, you're fucking obsessed. But, I mean, you got T-shirts now. You got vinyl now. You really put in the work and you really listen.
Yeah.
But I don't look at that and be like, whoa, you're going way overboard. It's just a different reaction, just like we would have different songs. You out there will have a very different reaction. You may hit a Tanner level. You may transcend Tanner. You may meet me where I'm at, and you may give them a chance and still hate them. But you owe it to yourself to really do the work because it's like when friend of the show Tyler turned us on the Beach Boys.
Exactly.
It's like when the Stop Making Sense band, or I guess they called themselves Start Making Sense. Yes. The tribute band, when they turned us on to the web series Yacht Rock, and out of that we got into Steely Dan, which is a staple for you and me.
Yeah,
everything.
everything.
Steely Dan stans.
Listen to every Steely Dan album when we were out at your camp last weekend.
Oh, yeah. We'll just cut a swath.
Yep.
We know we just mumble every word. It's pretty fucking wild. So, like, your world gets opened up if you just do it. Just when someone recommends it, try it. Even if it sounds like bullshit to you, try it. Because it might be bullshit, but at least you gave it a shot. Because it might blow your mind.
Yeah, it might be bullshit to you, but to the, you know what I mean? And again, it's about what time you get to it, too.
Right.
You know, it's all about timing. Yeah, find yourself in the proper moment to give it a shot.
I like that. Find yourself in the proper moment to give it a shot. That's good. I think that's a good place to to dump it, don't you think?
Sweet. Yeah, dump it.
Fuck. You're right. Dump it. Dump it. No pressure. If
Yeah.
you want to plug your socials or anything.
What I'll plug is that it's been discussed before. I play in the '90s band Laser Dad at laser.dad on Instagram. I'm really bad at this. There's a Z in laser, and I believe there's a period in between laser and dad.
I'm confirming laser. Yes, laser.dad.
Laser.dad, and laser is spelled with a Z. So LAZER period DAD. If you toss us a like, that'd be nice. Get us in the algorithm a little bit more. If you're ever in the Vermont area, check us out. We play in Burlington a lot. And we play sometimes at Mount Snow. So if you board or ski, come check us out.
And if you're, to echo something that Sean said in our Phantom Airwave on the record, fellow Vermont group, if you are within driving distance of Vermont and you want to get these guys for a show, it's well worth it. They do corporate events.
Yeah, we do corporate. We do weddings. We will travel if the price is right. Wink. But yeah, it's just people like playing 90s music, and I think people like 90s music.
Couldn't agree more. I look back on my time with you guys very fondly.
Good.
So anything else you want to plug, or is that it?
No. Well, there's one final thing. I'm as we record this, I'm heading out to San Francisco within a week, and my personal itinerary has changed a lot since checking out the Grateful Dead. They lived in a house together. You can go see the house. You can go see some landmarks where they did album artwork and things like that. So if you're traveling to the San Francisco area, listen to this stuff before you go there so you don't miss out on the chance on potentially doing something really cool.
Yeah,
because I would have missed it. I would have missed it if we hadn't watched the documentary at that time.
Yeah, that's very true. San Francisco was that hub. You got some Kerouac stuff. You got some Grateful Dead stuff.
Janice was their neighbor, essentially.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's some cool shit to get into. Well, that's awesome. I hope it's a great trip.
Thank you.
I'm sure it will be. In terms of things to plug on my end, we've always got these reaction videos coming out. There's only one place to see them, and the majority of you are probably listening on that platform. It's YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/c/outonthatline to find our YouTube channel, which is stocked with content. Tanner and I have that On the Record series that we've started to quarterback. Word has it we're going to do another one of those soon.
I heard that from a friend.
I heard it from a friend of a friend.
I heard it from a friend who...
Heard it from a friend who...
Heard it from another that we were making another video.
And there it is. Is that a hint to what we're covering? Maybe, maybe not. You'll have to tune in to see. The only place to do that is on our official YouTube. Again, youtube.com/c/outonthatline. We've got our singles, reactions, the podcast, On the Record, all kinds of stuff coming up. So remember to subscribe and tell us what it is you want to hear for albums or reactions. And as Jeff always says at the end, Tanner, anything else?
No. Everyone have a good rest of your day or night, depending on when you listen to this.
Always a hoot.
Always a hoot.
Always a hoot. And until next time.